Dan Hurley, he's got a new memoir, Never Stop, Life, Leadership, and What It Takes to Be Great. Before we get to the book, do you want to weigh on this topic of driving in the fast lane? What kind of driver are you?
I mean, it would probably, surprise people, but I'm actually a pretty calm driver. My wife drives like a Jersey person. I listen, you should not be driving, 5 or 10 miles per hour below the speed limit in the left lane, like left furthest lane, slow drivers. They're very frustrating. I would say my biggest frustration is like when you're getting off an exit and there's a backup, when you're getting off on an exit and people cut you, where you've waited in traffic to get off an exit and people drive past that congestion and then cross over at the last second and don't sit and wait the 10 minutes to get off the exit.
Have you been flipped off?
A lot. Yeah, a lot. I'm more of but I'm not a flip off person. I think it aggravates people more when you give them a thumbs up, like, "Hey, great job, you're good." Like start clapping. I like clapping at people.
All right, so you're writing a memoir here, and by the way, next Wednesday, October 1st. You can celebrate the publication of the new book. It'll be on campus, the Jorgensen Center for Performing Arts. $40 for adults, $35 for UConn students. All tickets, general admission. What was the biggest challenge of being vulnerable in this book?
Yeah, I would say, for me, Dan, it was probably like reliving some of the tougher parts of your life. You end up reading the manuscript, 8 or 9 times, and you make some subtle changes or some bigger changes with wording, or what have you. But when you're reading those tough parts of your life, whether it's, just my experience as a player in college, dealing with, some severe, mental health issues, serious depression, the tough parts of your career, and your family life, like being a young husband and a young father and dealing with, career adversity and financial struggles. So I think like, when you're working on the project and you're like reading those tough parts about your life and rereading them and rereading them and rereading them, it became a little bit uncomfortable. It was almost like I was re-experiencing that again.
Your brother's one of the great point guards in college basketball history, but you felt the brunt of that, it felt like, because you weren't Bobby Hurley. How do you address that stress level, being mocked, and how that factored in with depression?
Yeah, I think for me, this book was, an opportunity, to reach people that, suffer. For me, I've had an unhealthy relationship, with perfectionism. A lot of, I'm obviously, I'm filled with insecurity, which is at times really a positive thing, to keep you striving, but at times like fear of failure, insecurity, an unhealthy relationship with perfectionism. And I think the thing that caused me the most suffering, really throughout my life, my playing career, and then when I became a coach was, the comparison trap, that comparison, game that you play with yourself, relative to others is something that, became torturous for me as a player, with my brother, and then as a young coach, with my dad.
Are you satisfied? Can you be satisfied?
No, never. Um, I don't think so. Not the way I'm wired. I think, for me, it's embedded. The standard, the drive. Just the household you grow up in. Your own competitive fire. That's a byproduct of where you grew up, how you were raised, the mentality you've developed, the place that you coach at. Like when you choose to coach at a place like UConn, and coach the basketball team here, there's a constant pressure to, to deliver, externally, but, when that internal drive, begins, when I start accepting losing, or when I'm not devastated by a season like last year, then, it'll be time for me to get out.
How close did you come to leaving college basketball recently?
I would say for 2 or 3 days, like I was, I had pretty extensive conversations, with my guy Jordan Bezant, over at Fox for a couple days, and yeah, I mean, it was like the perfect storm of things. The sport itself, not having any idea what the rules of your game are going to be, relative to, we're hearing rumors that there's going to be potentially a 50 year for players. So you've got, NIL, where you have no idea what the market is right now. You have this, or the players going to now be getting 5 years, potentially 5 years to play five. There's been no restrictions relative to the portal. It's still free agency at the end of every year. And then you put on top of that, for me, you go back to back, those seasons are longer. So there's a little bit of a, success fatigue. The Lakers things happens. So your ego is at an all-time high. Then you have a horrible season. And then you take the criticism throughout the year that, and a lot of times it's justified. And so it's like the perfect storm of stuff.
He's Dan Hurley. The book is Never Stop: Life, Leadership, and What It Takes to Be Great. And he co-wrote this with great writer Ian O'Connor. Do you have imposter syndrome?
Yeah, I mean, imposter syndrome, insecurity, absolutely insecurity. There's definitely a feeling that's been pretty embedded in me, that I'm never quite good enough. But it's not just relative to basketball. I also feel that way, as a husband, as a father, in other aspects of my life. I just have this, mindset where I feel like I can always do more. I can always be better. And one of the first things that Coach Calhoun told me when I got the job here, besides get your ass in gear, get this program fixed, was like, the best coaches have a level of insecurity about them that's a real driver to continue to get better, and always be prepared.
What's the difference between coaching intense or coaching angry?
Well, I think I coached intense in 2024, and I coached angry. Like, yeah, it's for me. I think in my life, I've done probably, and two or three things could be true about any one thing. But I would say for me, I got really good at handling, failure or struggle in my career and in my life in basketball. And I would say that what I've reflected a lot during the course of the season and the off season was just how I handled the success, and how I didn't have the season as a coach in 25. And I think that, I'll be a much better coach in 26, because I don't think I handled the success, and where we were as a program very well last season.
How dark did the days get for you, whether it's when you were playing, when you left playing?
Yeah. Dark to the point where, you give serious consideration, to doing something to harm yourself, potentially do something to end things, to take your life. Just feeling like, back then it was not, there was a stigma around mental health and being vulnerable and opening up, especially for men with other men, about your feelings. So with your fathers, with your coaches back then, You didn't feel like there was anyone that you could talk to about how you're feeling, your struggles, your difficulties, your suffering. And for me, it was getting into therapy, meeting Sister Catherine Waters at Seton Hall. Really changed my life.
Are you built for this?
For going on the show, I'm definitely built for it. Yeah. I've watched you forever.
Coaching 10 more years, Danny. Are you built for 10 more years?
I don't know about 10. I don't really, I think that sometimes I'll say I'm going to coach till I'm 60. Or, I'm going to coach just my 59th year. I mean, I would like, to enjoy, a part of my life where I have some vitality, some health, because I love my wife. I want to, and I want my wife and my family to experience life outside of basketball, where you could travel and be more of a civilian, live a more normal life, have a normal Christmas holiday and a New Year's. I feel like I'm always playing on New Year's or New Year's Eve, and I feel like I always got a pit in my stomach on Christmas Eve or what have you. But and then the other aspect of it for me is like when you're in the sports world, whether you're a player or you're a coach and you're making the type of money that we're making, I just feel like you have an obligation to literally push yourself to the point of burnout. For the $7 or $8 million a year that they pay me to coach UConn, I should work myself close to death for that, to make that type of living, to be a basketball coach. Or if you're an NBA player or an NFL player making 20, 30, $40 million a year, the last thing you should be thinking about is longevity. What you should be thinking about, it for me, for the way I look at it, is pushing yourself to the absolute max until burnout hits. And then you obviously, at that point, then you could retire. I grew up, the coaches like Dick Vermeil, were the coaches that I idolized.
Yeah, but you got to have quality. There has to be balance.
I've got that ahead of me.
No, you need it. Trust me. I did not have balance when I did Sports Center, and it was less stressful by far than what you're going through. And until I found some kind of balance, I didn't enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you enjoy those 2 championships as much as you probably should have. The highest of highs, you're probably, fixated on what happened last season. And that's, you got to have balance, man. You got to.
It's listen, you enjoy. I mean, like when you realize you've won the championship, there's an elation and an indescribable feeling of joy and love, that reaches you, like the deepest parts of your soul, and this incredible realization of climbing Mount Everest and being at the top. It dissipates so quickly.
Yeah.
But Dan, I think with just the way that I'm wired, and I think a lot of the best coaches and the people like my dad that I've modeled, it's like the season feels a lot like suffering and relief, suffering and relief, and relief, and then it either ends in elation, or it ends the way it ended for me in Florida versus Florida, and then there's the tunnel, and there's the sore loser Dan.
Do you think back on that at all? What, sore loser Dan?
I do.
I know you address it, but,
Yeah.
where did that come from where, well, maybe it's just the competitor in you.
It is. And I think, again, like, I think a couple things could be true. I got to get better that way. Like that's something that, trust me, when it's over, I lack that self-control and awareness to be able to just walk away. Yeah, I mean, that's disappointing. I end up, tarnishing my reputation, and it's embarrassing, and it's not a positive thing, but it's also too a lot of, my superpower that I bring to the organization is this relentless competitive drive that my teams embody. And I do think in sports, you do need more of the characters that go, I think, kind of life or death urgency with winning and losing, I think is what makes sports great. So I think not having characters that look at games I don't look at it like a game. I look at it like a battle, a fight. It's not a game for me.
Your voice sounds like it's in mid-season form. Does it ever sound good?
I mean, yesterday was day one, and you know, and I'm ready to go. And this is winter Dan. I think summer Dan, is late, a little more laid back. But this is the time of year where we all turn it up. I'm excited about this team. I think that this team, you don't go into the year like last year. I think you have enough time with your team in the summer and in the preseason, where I think going into last year, there was a feeling amongst the staff that maybe we didn't have enough relative to what we put together to be able to go for the three-peat. That will not be this team's story. This team has enough. If we give absolutely everything, and if our pursuit is honorable, if it's an honorable pursuit of championships with the way that we approach things, this team will have a chance to compete for all the championships.
I hope the book is cathartic for you, because you're visiting a lot of different places. Hopefully, you don't have to revisit them anymore. But when you write a memoir, you got to dig deep down, and you certainly did in this book with the help of Ian.
Yeah, I think, Dan, for me, when I read it, I always walked away from it saying, your life is kind of it's a little bit like a movie, like you've got this kind of a little bit, not that I'm any hero, but you got this kind of little bit of a hero's journey, and it's got all the elements of your struggles becoming your strength in the end, and just it's a real human story of personal struggle, family struggle, career struggle. You've got this coach, with dragon underwear laying under his desk before games because of his anxiety. I don't know who would play me. I guess I've been told like maybe a Billy Bob Thornton because of the cursing. But I don't know who would play me.
We can work on that. Hopefully, it's a happy ending when that movie comes out, a happy ending. Great to talk to you again. Thanks for sharing.
Thanks, brother.
That's Dan Hurley. The book is called Never Stop: Life, Leadership, and What It Takes to Be Great.